You want the AC on? Do you care?
Maybe we should turn it off. I'll turn it off. Or do you?
It does feel nice, though.
Okay, keep it going.
I kind of like...
Yeah, I mean, it feels more normal and natural, and yeah. Let's go crazy.
Let's just go crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Fundamentalists podcast. We're still alive. We did it, Pete. We're doing an episode...
Contrary to popular opinion or desire, we're still alive.
And this episode is... Okay, let's make a pact. This episode we're going to publish. It's going to go live.
It's going to go live no matter what happens.
We're not talking about anything too
Unless
crazy.
you say you use those words that you use that you can't use.
I'm a bad guy. So my name is Elliot Morgan. This is Peter Rollins. We do a podcast called The Fundamentalists, where we explore the possibility of life before death. I do internet and stand-up comedy, or at least when stand-up comedy was a thing, I used to do it. And this is Peter Rollins. He's a philosopher, theologian and a writer and a public speaker from Belfast. And we are good friends. We lived together for a couple years. We love doing this podcast. We love talking about things that are happening in the world. But sometimes too many things happen in the world at once, and then we did a couple episodes, I think. Didn't feel like they were what we wanted, so we decided not
worthy of the audience.
Exactly.
I mean, to be honest, I have more respect for our audience than you do. I think you would put any old shit out, but I have respect for the people who listen to this.
That's true.
I'm like, listen, we gotta. If it's not up to scratch, we shouldn't do it. Whereas you say these people are so idiotic, they wouldn't know if it was bad.
No,
to quote.
No, to quote, right out of the gate, we're having to edit this. This one's not going up. That's not true. I think my philosophy, for lack of a better term, no pun intended, is I believe you put it all out there, and you trust that the audience is going to be cool with things. However, we are living, I would say, objectively in an era where people are a little bit more sensitive. And as such, I think we can be a little bit more timid in how we approach things. I think that's justifiable.
I remember back early on, like when we talked about doing a podcast, because I come from the world of where you do less, but you try to make sure everything you say kind of like is thought through and has been researched. And then on the other extreme, there's podcasts where you put out loads of podcasts in a year, and some of them will be good and some of them won't be. And we're trying to find the mix between those two. So at first I was like, we can't put anything out that we don't feel was really strong. But actually with podcasts, the point is you just put out lots of them. And sometimes there'll be a really good one. Sometimes it'll be the bad one.
Yes.
Most of the time they'll be all right. Is
my
that the
image
philosophy?
of people listening to this podcast, and please let us know if you're watching the video in the comments. Yeah, please, God, let us know. But what your routine is, because I imagine if I listen to podcasts, I'm doing it either like on a plane or I'm on...
You're not taking notes.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just like, I'm in the back, it's in the background, I'm listening. So if something is said that's wrong, I don't necessarily mind so much. But we also want to do a good job.
We want to do a good job.
You're very
I'm less
thorough.
concerned about the wrong thing, I gotta say. But I'm more concerned about the incorrect thing. Like that we don't say anything that's kind of like not thought through. But,
You're very good, I think, at explaining your positions in a way that is like in-depth, where it's nuanced, and I think if you feel like you're not doing that, it's a little bit scarier. Whereas I don't care. I'm just sort of like, this is...
Which is kind of symptomatic of the fact, if you're watching this, that he's drinking mimosa and I'm drinking coffee. I think that says something.
But why is that?
Well, that's because I had a few mimosas before you arrived and gave you the last one and thought I should have a coffee to kind of try to get back in the game.
Calm down. You need to calm down, Pete. So this episode is basically, we're just going to talk about the podcast a little bit, kind of do a reset, say hi to you guys. Give maybe some cursory thoughts on how everything is going. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope if you're listening to this, that you are, hold it hanging in there. But I also don't want to get too hung up on this sort of like overly saccharine sentimentality that I'm seeing right now.
You're in the YouTube world where everyone's a little bit.
It's a little sugary sweet.
Yeah.
It's a little like.
People are scared.
And you have to do this sort of, and we talked about this in an episode that didn't go live, because we did a whole episode on sort of some privilege, some of the BLM stuff, and I think that,
it was actually a good episode. Like, there was nothing wrong with it. I just thought we could do better.
We could do better, and then
Maybe we should put it out.
Yeah.
Like, do better as in, like, anyway.
We'll figure it out, because we're going to talk about that. Let's talk about, we'll talk about what our plan is in a second, and you guys can let us know what you think about this. But I think it's a pretty good idea. Pretty crazy idea. So anyway... we did this thing, and in that we talked about how you kind of have to, there's a code that you kind of have to speak with a lot of these things right now, where you have to say the right things, kind of prove a little bit like that you are on the sort of one camp. We have a whole episode on the idea of the shibboleth we did forever ago, which I don't remember what that episode's called. It's one of a double-edged sword about how we title our episodes.
Maybe we should just call it shibboleth.
Yeah, because it was probably something like...
And The Public, which was more recent, was also on this similar
The Public,
vibe.
yeah.
The Public,
and that was actually... I felt like that was such a good one to go out, or not go out, but take an intermission on, because it seemed to be like proven more. It seemed to actually gain relevancy after we
did it.
And
The
I don't know
one
if that's
that
a good
didn't go
thing
out,
for
by
the
the
world,
way.
but it was a good thing for us.
Yeah, the one that didn't go out, was called Sex with Ducks, because you had a prolonged analogy that involved sex with ducks, but that isn't out in the world. But it was, but I remember you did get carried away with that analogy.
What was the analogy?
I think it was, if someone was having sex with ducks, then how would you respond? And I can't remember exactly what the analogy was. I just remember it involved
It's perfect.
sex with
Whatever
ducks.
it is, I don't need to hear anything else. It sounds brilliant.
Yeah, it was very good. Yeah.
So how's your life going, Pete? How are you doing?
Yeah, it's good. It's been nice.
I mean, it's you've had a couple mimosas Friday morning.
Yeah, so that's a good start to the day.
Were you aware? Are you aware of the days?
Very loosely. One day bleeds into the other. I'm just very much. I get up in the morning, read a bit.
But you haven't lost track. Like, every day still what day it is.
Pretty much, not like all the time, but you know.
Isn't it funny, man? You're up here, you do your thing. I'm where I am, doing my thing. We do our things. And then, but I was talking about this with someone recently, how there's just everything's happening in a vacuum. So like I just became an uncle, which is very exciting. Yeah. But that's one example. There's all of these sort of life things that are happening, but they all seem to be happening in isolation, because they are. And it makes it seem not real. It makes everything feel very surreal.
Yeah. I mean, for LA, which is such a social city, and nobody's being social. Mm-hmm. I know some people who are extroverts here, I know, are really struggling with that.
I took the Myers-Briggs test again. I always like to take that. Mm-hmm. I got an E, whatever, the letter E was in it for extrovert. Mm. I don't know what that's about. I think I've just been trapped for too long.
Yeah, yes, so that's right. It's actually changed your personality.
Yeah, when I was I for sure has. Do you think you haven't changed your personality one lickety split, have you?
No, this fits very neatly with who I am.
Yeah, it's so perfect. The apocalypse fits perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking that although I do love being around people, and I love going out and doing events and all of that, meeting people, my tendency is to more look forward to not going out. Even if I haven't gone out for 2 months, I'll have to psych myself up to go out. But if I'm staying in, I don't have to psych myself up.
Yeah.
So that's just natural for me.
That's nice.
And I think as I get older, it's even more like that.
Well,
which isn't good necessarily, but it's just the way it is.
You're just settling in.
Yeah.
You're just settling into life, There's nothing. You're comfortable in your own skin. You got your thing going. You're good. Yeah. You also don't spend as much time on Twitter and like social media as I do, which probably helps your mental health. So you're at home. I'm at home. Why haven't we done a podcast?
Yeah, well, you know what? We had a conversation about that. My theory was because something's not working. Because
we are not working.
We are not working. My theory was...
The something is us.
Yes.
We're not working enough.
Yes. Yeah, but there was something that just wasn't fitting, that just meant that we kind of wanted to do it, but never wanted to do it. So we had a conversation yesterday, and we started to try and work that stuff out and go right, what is it? Because we both want to do this, we both believe in it, but we hadn't done it for about 2 months, 3 months, more.
Yeah. What's your theory on it? What's your? Because we have differing thoughts a little.
Yes, just a little, but I think complementary. When we talked about meeting, I was I didn't know exactly, but I felt like we needed a mission that we both 100% were excited about. A mutual mission of the thing that whenever the two of us are interconnecting at our best, We go like that. We believe in this.
Yeah.
And I think we just needed to talk through that to get like a kind of what the Fundamentalists is, what we're trying to achieve with it, in a way that kind of excites both of us.
Well, and we were, I did bring over a pretty copious amount of marijuana when we had that discussion. Do you remember if we reached what is your? I was like, that's a mission. Yeah, that sounds cool, man. That sounds awesome. It'd be awesome if we had that. What did I say?
Well, we're doing it. We're doing today, so it must have worked. Yeah.
But we didn't really hammer down a mission statement. We just both agreed that we like doing this. That's where we left off.
Yes, I think that was the core of it. We talked about what each of us wanted to bring to it, and we go like, right. We talked about the dials. Remember the dials?
Yeah, the dials. I remember the dials.
Yeah.
Plato's dials.
Yeah.
I got zingers. I'm reading a book right now. That's my big contribution.
Yeah. First time for everything. My goodness,
I'm telling
your
you,
mom would be proud.
Every time I read a book, I'm like, look at me, I can't believe me.
It's like Jez reading Mr. Nice.
It's 100% like that. No, it's Jez going at the bookstore talking about the baseball.
Oh yeah, baseball man.
It's a book about baseball. What's it about? What's it called? Baseball Man. One of the best. So. What were we saying? Okay, so mission statement. We have this whole thing going.
Oh yeah, but you're reading. The dials. The dials. So the dials, basically, where there's two dials. One is kind of purely intellectual content, and one is kind of personal, anecdotal content.
Yes. And
my dial is like I said, 80% kind of like ideas based, 20% personal or anecdotal.
Yes. And which is very adorable that you think that's what the.
Yeah, because you said it was 93%.
I was like, you think you can give 20% personal? I feel like a dentist when I'm trying to get you to tell personal
stories.
To say
anything like personal, okay, yeah. Well, I got shit from some friends whenever you talked about when I got the knife attack, and my friends would be like, that was boring. Like, don't bother with the personal stuff.
I mean, I guess stay in your lane. And if there's one thing we know, it's always listen to your friends.
Always, yeah. Exactly. Well, then I said you were 80% the other way. You bring in the anecdotal life stuff, personal stuff, and then 20% the ideas.
5% sex appeal.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like, I think that's what really works. But there's kind of like we both. But then you were saying you felt my dials were wrong. I said 80-20.
I think the idea of it is fine. Yeah. I think whatever the complementary whatever is, because I think. Whatever the exact percentages is, I don't know.
But you are, without saying what's going to happen, because I don't think you can say what's going to happen, but you are definitely becoming more interested in kind of like looking more deeply into certain ideas.
Thank you for being opaque about it, and I will continue to be opaque about it. More on that later. But yes, I'm going into getting interested more in this kind of stuff, and it's very exciting, Pete. I got to tell you, I'm having a great time with it. Preliminarily, it's not really a thing yet, but I'm excited. So that part is good. So we're going to be both having more to talk about soon, which is great. The mission. Here's what I think it is. Yeah. I think at best, this podcast has to be an ever-present weekly thing, because I think with the way the world is currently going, I think we might be able to do something good in it and offer something good.
Get rich off the collapse of the society.
At the collapse of society, okay, which I told you about last the whole. Yeah, we won't get into that now. Which is it's crazy how people are really smart about profiting off of this whole thing.
Right?
Did you read that article that was like a journalist who just kept calling us a billionaire all throughout the pandemic, and just basically being like, you can remain anonymous, but I'm going to keep asking you questions. And the whole time he's just like, it's fine. I don't care. It's fine. Everything's fine. Doesn't matter.
I didn't hear about this.
It's a really interesting article. They don't name who the billionaire is.
I saw this mentioned social media, but I didn't read the article. I just saw the title, Anonymous Billionaire, but I don't know anything about it.
It's super interesting. But anyway, all that said, I think we just have to get out of our own way a little bit, because I know me personally, and we talked about this the other day, I feel a little bit paranoid just in general. I mean, everyone is kind of on eggshells right now, and even just the entire industry of YouTube seems to be in flux. Seems to be a mass exodus happening from a lot of old creators, it's kind of inspiring to see, and also kind of, heavy. It's just heavy to experience. But yeah, it's also like, it goes back to the kind of isolation thing of just being like, there's this caginess I feel about being too open about my thoughts, because I don't know if other people are experiencing this, but like the change from going to having a public life to being really isolated, I think has resulted in me being very like, I don't even talk on social media very much. I don't do any of that stuff anymore. And this isn't stuff that's necessarily changed a ton, but it got like cemented, I think, over the past couple months. And so when we get together and we're like, we're going to talk about this and this and this and all these ideas, there's a little bit of like, just insecurity, I think, a little bit of fear and laziness and all that. But
and weed doesn't contribute to paranoia
or laziness.
Yeah, yeah. At least that's two things that have been scientifically proved. Is that right? Yeah, that's good.
Exactly. Yeah, it is like that, and it is also though like, whatever. I'll do. This is a period of time where I'm like, green light everything. Do whatever you want. Let's just get through this. So I think the mission statement is, or the mission of the podcast is to humanize big ideas in a way that makes them palatable for people.
Oh, that's nice. That's well said. Yeah.
Pulled it out of my butt.
Yeah. Well, nice. Yeah. Because what our thing is about life before death and all of that. That fits very neatly with my work in general. That's why this is so important to me. It's like, I'm doing my own stuff, kind of doing the seminars and books, whatever, and then this is about bringing these ideas in a more conversational way.
Yeah,
ideas that might help people. It's also be able like to live better.
I've gotten to do, you as well, but I've gotten to do a bunch of cool stuff throughout my quote unquote career. I've gotten a lot of cool opportunities, but whenever people come up to me or tweet at us or compliment me specifically about this podcast, I get more excited than any other thing, which I think is a good sign. I mean, there's definitely, that just means that I'm excited to keep doing it, but I want it to be better and more consistent, and tell your friends about it, I guess is what we're saying. But so here's my
I was going to say, I think you're going to say what I was going to say. I think
the plan,
exactly. The plan, the well thought out plan from the business meeting we had,
the business meeting that we both remember,
summit that we had.
A lot of giggling, which you got to do. It's just nice to have fun. I think me and Joe and Steve are gonna socially distant hang soon for the first time in however many months, and that'll be nice too, because it's like, you got to do that otherwise, because all we're doing is seeing each other in order to make content, which we didn't want to do. I didn't want to, that was the other thing too, is like, I just want to go hang out with you, and then in the back of my mind, I think both of us have this like sense of guilt of like, we should be doing the podcast. So here's my plan to alleviate that. We do the morning routine experiment. This is going to be easier for you than it is for me. Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday, 4 to 5 days a week. 10 a.m. I'll be at my place. You're at your place.
This is never going to happen.
Yes, it is. Listen, it's going to happen 3 times.
Right.
We do it for 2 weeks. I know it is. It does sound like it's never going to happen, but that's why you say it, and then you promise it, and then if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Every day we do a podcast, 40 minutes. If we like it, we like it. If we don't, we don't. I come up with a subject one day, you come up with a subject, or maybe we do week by week, depending if we can actually get the ball rolling on this. That's how we do it. That's how we guarantee that we end up doing this. Is I will take the first week of subjects.
Right.
Of topics.
The first week though, so 5. You'll come up with 5 subjects.
Let's just say 4.
Okay, 4.
Let's just
short week.
Let's not bullshit. But then you do the second week. Even if we get through 2 weeks, we're going to have 8 to 10 episodes, which is more than we've done in the past 3 months.
That's true. Yeah, no, I like that, because I don't have to think about, for a week, you'll literally bring the concepts, we'll talk. Then a week, I'll bring the concepts, we'll talk. That's good. Only thing is, I wonder if our concepts are going to be weighted differently, so actually 1, 1, 1, 1 will actually feel better.
It might, but we could do that. I also think that either one works. I mean, if we have, because I'm thinking if we get them all under our belt, then we're good. Then we can pick and choose and schedule.
Put them out. Very good. Yeah, so that's cool. Have you got any thoughts about the kinds of things you want to?
I think we need to go more current, man. I think we got to go way more current, because I think that's just what people I think it's what everyone's interested in, myself included. Like, I think there's I could be wrong, but I get less interested in our subject matter when the world is actually more interesting than the philosophy stuff. When this podcast, I think, was like a weekly, like, we're killing it, it's every week, I think it was a much calmer era, and so it was very enjoyable to kind of dive into like the deeper stuff and be like, what about this? Have you thought about this way? But now I feel like the scales have shifted. Does that make sense? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, as in you should do that, and then, but then you're probably going to be the more contemporary person, and I'll probably be more of the kind of like, what's an idea that's been around for hundreds or thousands of years, developed over time, but that can help us make sense of the world, and that's what's going to be good about this. So you might bring a topic like, you know, in terms of, say, kind of protest or something as an idea, and I might bring a concept like myth. What is myth? And they're very, very different. You know, protest is about literally what's happening at the moment. Myth is about what is, you know, these stories that are told across the world for thousands of years in different types of ways. What actually is a myth? And but bouncing between those,
of a collectively unconscious archetype, Pete. Gosh.
Well, the reason why I was doing it is because I've been reading Levi Strauss at the moment because of Jung, which we both have. You know, you have an interest in. So, and I have an interest in, but you've gotten, you know.
I'm getting real interested. In it. Yeah. Also, we got to do a whole episode on this red book, man. So y'all listen to this. I didn't know.
I love that you came in the other day and you were like,
we gotta talk about the red book.
Yeah, you were like, you know, Jung was a bit crazy sometimes. Like,
yeah, I didn't know he lost his mind. I didn't know he went batshit crazy.
Yeah, like for a lot of years he disappeared off the scene. The whole Freud thing, I think, took it out of him, like their break, and he did kind of maybe have a psychotic break, but he definitely, you know,
because he was heartbroken.
Yeah.
Do you think he was in love with Freud? Do you think Jung was in love?
Oh, I think that for sure. Jung and Freud, like, he knew that this was one of the big movements of the 20th century, and whenever that relationship started to break, definitely I would say he was deeply affected by it.
Okay, but you don't think it was like a romantic?
I don't think so. I wouldn't have thought. I never thought that before, but maybe. But
I just read something like that somewhere that kind of hinted that maybe there was some kind of maybe it was like one of those animated YouTube videos, you know, that shows all the things, but I don't know if it's true or not.
I mean, that could be the case. I don't know much about the biography of Jung, so...
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, I see what you're saying between the myth and the protest thing, because, yeah, the myth stuff is very interesting, and how both are still relevant to today's stuff, because
they're very different, but then people will make connections that we don't even imagine. But if we're putting out this contemporary and then kind of like ahistorical, and then eventually the connections will happen, and I think that would be very cool.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's kind of amazing what I'm figuring out, what I'm kind of baffled by, besides the Red Book by Jung, by the way, just to give because I kind of teased that essentially Jung went off, disappeared for a while. Carl Jung was friends with Freud. Freud was like, there's a conscious and an unconscious, and Jung was like, I got one more for you, and Freud was like, that's some mystical bullcrap, I don't believe that. And then Jung was like, no, for real, like, you can see it all throughout myths and all throughout religions all throughout the world, that these archetypes sort of manifest. And Freud was like, you sound like a weirdo. And then Jung was like, well, whatever. And he went away. And then Jung, while he went away, was like scribbling in this red book of his and was trying to basically document his journey into his own unconscious, and trying to find his unconscious dreams and experiences that seemed somewhat supernatural and kind of horrific, kind of terrifying a little bit. Some of the stories about, like, he would turn over in bed and see a woman with only half a face staring at him, which is just horror movie type stuff. And he wrote all these stories down, and he never wanted it published because he said that if it was published, people would think he was crazy. And then it turns out this was true. And then in 2009, it got published. So it blows my mind, first of all, there's something that recent that is in sort of this whole world. I've never heard of the Red Book. I can't wait to read it. It sounds terrifying. I haven't read it yet. But I'm very interested in it. It sounds like a weird, dark, horror-themed diary.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, it's actually, I was producing a music video recently and had the Red Book in the music video.
I mean, yeah. It was just sitting there.
It was just sitting there. Well, actually, he flicks through it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So,
and then he gets shivers. But yeah, it's very fascinating. So, subject-wise, we have a bunch of stuff to talk about like that. But the myth stuff, man, that's so cool. All that stuff, and then also you're just
we could be Call Me Daddy. Do you know the Call Me Daddy controversy? These two girls who had a podcast that's absolutely massive, but then they went in different ideological directions. It's so fascinating because it's so not the type of podcast you or I would ever listen to, but the drama is so interesting.
What happened?
They fell out over a whole pile of things, but partly it was contracts and money because it became a very successful contract, and then the whole thing fell apart. We don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about that, but there could be a split with you being into Jung and me not. It's like this could be this, but it'll be really good for us.
Yeah.
This could be what makes us like blow up.
It could be what gets us those big contracts.
Yeah, the big contracts
that can finally really tear us apart.
Kind of semi-popular philosophy podcast world. Yeah.
Then when we get really successful and we break apart because of the money involved, we get to be smartasses and be like, it's because he's a Jungian and Pete's a friend. We can blame it on that. But anyway, so they got upset about money. Basically.
They got upset. Although, and it's difficult, but I wish I could remember the names of the two women. But the one who's still doing it they're both very very good communicators, very compelling. And the woman who told her story, she did it very well. So I'll have to send you the link.
Please do.
It's fascinating. It's very, very good. But I was going like with what'll happen is it won't be about the money or the contracts. It'll be about the red book.
Yes.
That we will fall out over.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
The thing is, I can't imagine caring enough about any of it.
I guess I think that's good about both of us.
Yeah. I will. I mean, maybe I could get really into it and buy it lock, stock, and barrel and be like a disciple, but
well, I
don't know that I have that.
It's interesting because it's literally, as you said, it's his kind of like recordings and reflections on his inner fantasy and dream life.
Yeah.
So which is what psychoanalysis does, is it kind of like looks at the interior world and kind of listens to it and lets it speak.
He really. I know so little about it right now because I need to actually read it, but I want to read some other stuff first. But it's like, he treated it, I guess, like he was trying to explore, like an explorer would explore the realm of the deep sea or something, and he's like doing it with his consciousness and diving down as far as he can into it, which I think is very interesting. But it also, my understanding is, it differs entirely. Even the idea of diving into your unconscious as though it is this other realm, or there is this like other world that is present with us that's unconsciously manifesting, that doesn't seem even that seems like a huge step away from Freud and Lacan and all that.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is they both emphasize dream work. It's just Jung has this idea that the unconscious dreams. So he has this idea of that the unconscious itself has kind of archetypal dimensions. But funny enough, one of the things that brings them together, Freud and Jung, is the importance of the dream. I had a friend tell me a dream recently. Here's a good example, right? A friend told me a dream, and she was about to get on this transport. Let's call it a plane. I'm going to change a couple of details, so whatever. But get on this plane to go away, and on this plane, the pilot, who had this particular aspect on their wearing on their clothing, seemed horrible and was driving this person away from her family. And going like, oh, this is really interesting, because the plane, we talked about the plane being kind of like moving away from family responsibilities over to a new land to be able to kind of like pursue something new. The element that was on the pilot reflected this person's alter ego, right? So they have a celebrity name and a personal name. So it was their celebrity name. And the dream basically was able to
this
tell
person,
that person
who is dreaming has themselves a
yes. So they have a like a public name that they use for doing their public stuff, and they've got their own name. And so the element now, it was all very hidden, but ultimately you decode it. And this pilot was taking this person away from their family to somewhere else. And the dream basically you could see was a way of going, like, this person was conflicted between their family responsibilities and their desire to public persona, and that there was a certain dislike of the side of them that was trying to pull them away from their family. Anyway, the point is, the dream was not just, oh, this weird thing, I almost got onto a plane and my family couldn't get onto the plane because it was just leaving, and this pilot was this this separate person. Like, once you start to decode it, you're like, oh my goodness, this gives me an insight into my own struggles.
Yeah, it's all very fascinating. It's also, I mean, my understanding of a lot of that would be you would remove your own emotional entanglements with the dream when you're analyzing it a little bit. So, so if you're like, I was so stressed out because I couldn't get on the plane, and also there was this pilot, it's like if you get caught up in the drama of the dream, you can lose track of, like, if you remove your ego from it, you can then just see, like, there's this, okay, what could that be? That if I stop panicking about getting on the plane, what could that pilot actually be? And then you can actually...
Yeah, and also you can get caught up in the narrative of the dream. It's not that important. It's like the little elements. So that's why people can't find it very hard to interpret their own dreams, because, they get caught up in... Like, for example, you're everybody in your dream. So somebody might get caught up in, oh, there were 3 people in my dream. There's not really 3 people in your dream. There's 3 yous in the dream, right? Because, there is nobody in the dream but your own self, your own conscious and unconscious. So, people get caught up in a whole pile of, like, false flags and weird things. So but
it's super interesting, because the Red Book, there's people who say you can do your own Red Book, you can dream journal, and you can dive into all that. I like doing that, or at least I like the idea of it. I don't really do it.
You do have your arts and crafts night.
My arts and crafts night. But here's what I did start doing. Ooh. Because they say that it can happen in the state, I forget the term for it. It's between dreaming and, or between awake and sleep.
Oh yeah, that twilight.
Not twilight, but it is like that, yeah. And that's where, like, night terrors happen, which I've experienced. I've had the demons. I've seen the demons. That shit's terrifying. Yeah. So
for someone who's got psychotic structure, which you don't, but that space is terrifying, because that's where the real
ghouls and goblins.
That's
ghouls and goblins. That's real ghouls and goblins. They live amongst us. There's nothing you can do to, at least in my experience, when I experienced what I experienced, I was like, there's nothing that can convince me that that didn't happen. It was crazy. Yeah. But if I'm not a psychotic person, so if I was a psychotic person, I imagine it would be a lot scarier. But even just since then, I've been taking little notes, and I'll be, like, falling asleep, and I'll see something that, like, I know wasn't something I was thinking of, because it was right when I was drifting off, and I've been taking it and writing it down, and it's pretty
that's very good, because that stuff, you can get really weird and interesting insights into yourself.
I haven't gotten anything except I saw a dude with red hair and a red beard and a nice suit in a circle with other people, and he seemed like a really fun guy. I've never seen this guy before, and then also I saw myself, but I had yellow eyes.
Okay. Wow. We could
yellow cat-like eyes.
Yellow what?
Cat-like eyes.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well,
boo.
There's lots of I always like to, whenever you listen to someone explain their dreams, so you say fungi, you go like, oh, that sounds like fungi, and that sounds like
fungi.
Fungi.
Mushrooms.
No, well, fungi is in mushrooms, and you can make really interesting, like
the phonetic connection.
Yeah. Phonetic connections are important. There's a few different... Condensation's important. Phonetic connections are important. It's once you open yourself...
Condensation?
Condensation was where like, 2 concepts are, like, condensed into one. So a word will have,
people are sweating.
Oh yeah. No, to condense, and metaphors, and so I love it, because you can listen, and then you just free associate, and you can very quickly, like, get some big insights.
The free association is the part that makes it the weirdest, when you just start going, maybe this, maybe there. It's so crazy. The brain is a fascinating wonderland.
But the thing about Jung and the different, Jung felt that, here's the funny thing is, right, without getting too deep into it, one of the differences between kind of the analytical psychology of Jung and psychoanalysis is not that Jung believed in the collective unconscious. It's that he believed in the personal unconscious, because in a way the unconscious is collective, right? That's what. But the big difference is Jung did feel, as you know, that there are certain kind of primordial forms that don't reflect your own struggles in the world, but rather reflect something of humanity. And that, and then that gets us into this, and it is really interesting. So Jung kind of did notice that, like, themes like mother, father, child, hero, wise woman, wise man, all like snakes,
jester, wise
jester,
woman,
trickster, like that. These he was kind of trickster, like observing that
magician.
Yeah, these come up.
Yeah, and, the whole concept of the archetype thing is it's very interesting, and I don't know where the line is, but between, I can see both how he came to that conclusion, I can see how it has weight, and I can also see how I can understand how sometimes people hear stuff like this and they just go, nah. Like I can understand how people kind of turn away from that, because it's kind of a out there idea, because it basically, it's out there a little until you think about it, and you're like, no, that kind of does make sense. I mean, the whole argument is that, like, we developed language after we developed an ability to survive, because it's just, we were around before that. And we carried with us, like, certain things in our brains that have allowed us to continue to procreate and survive. And I can understand on an evolutionary level how we as a species could have developed myths and stories as a way to push ourselves forward.
Yeah. And I agree. Like, I think he was onto something, like, very, very, very important. My thing is that the structural anthropologist Levi Strauss gives an interpretation of why these myths it seem to have some sort of similar structure that actually does justice to what Jung sees, but puts it into different language. So at some stage, we should do. I'll be bringing that subject to.
Can you give a little piece of it?
Yeah. So Levi Strauss basically argued, and he was like really the greatest anthropologist 20th century, big intellectual figure, but he argued that every myth, right, there's tens of thousands of myths, right, all these myths, and he studied, like, in one of his books is over 800 myths he looks at, but he says all myths can be boiled down to a basic formula, and it's a basic formula of oppositions and contradictions, that mythology is a way for a society to wrestle with a certain set of contradictions. And then Levi Strauss says that so contradiction is what basically all myths share, and because of that, we'd never, like, that's why there's a similarity between myths and even scientific research, is because actually it's not, the similarity is not in the content, it's not in the images, the similarity is in what the myth is attempting to overcome.
And how is that similar to science? Is that what you said?
Well, similar to Jung's collective unconscious in a way, because it's saying that it's not just like before Levi Strauss, it was like myths are understood historically, they develop out of a certain community, they tell you maybe a moral tale or whatever, or tell you about creation. But Levi Strauss says, no, there's a universal, like, basically there's a grammar. There's a grammar to mythology. And so even though, just like movies on Netflix, there's millions of movies, but they all fit under comedy, action, horror, right? They've got underlying structures. He says that mythology can manifest in an infinite variety of ways, but all mythology is attempting to do the same thing. And that connects with Jung, because that means that when we connect with the unconscious grammar of our lives, we're going to find that resonates with someone in a some sort of Aboriginal tribe.
Yeah.
Even though we're so separate.
As if we're all connected.
Yeah, we're all connected. So
but you're saying it's born out of the contradiction, and and Jung says the contradiction is like a product of the like, it seems like you're or Strauss. I think I know what I'm saying. It seems like Strauss is saying he's basically would be a more Freudian person, and he's taking that contradiction and he's going, if this is true, like hypothesis, if the core of the Freudian Lacanian thing, which is contradiction, is the basis for everything, then how does that explain Jung's observations.
Yes, yeah. So because Jung basically was correctly exploring and observing this weird sense in which we're all connected through these kind of mythologies, and so it's attempting to kind of like then delve into why that is. And so Jung and Levi-Strauss go a slightly different direction.
But how do you explain the beetle?
The beetle?
The
car?
Beetle. The what?
The car?
No, the Beetle. The Volkswagen Beetle. How is the engine in the back?
How do magnets work?
How do magnets work? How do you explain it? No, the Beetle. He's the story of him. Jung and his patient or whatever as the dream of the beetle and da da da.
Tell me that one. I don't know if I know that.
Yeah, she's very closed off. His patient. She thinks that she's very rationalistic. She's very she doesn't believe in any of that foo-foo-y stuff, and she's logical. And she's explaining to him a dream in which she sees this beetle, very colorful, big beetle, and it does whatever and flies around. And then as she's explaining it, historically in the office, the similar beetle, basically the same beetle, but it was the closest relative to that beetle that existed in, I think, Zurich, and it looked exactly the same. And it was a rare beetle even in Zurich. And he opened the window, grabs the beetle, tosses it at her, and is like, "There's your beetle." And I guess it was the same exact, it looked exactly like from her dream, and she had sort of a breakthrough, for lack of a better word, in which she was then more open to the mysteries of life rather than thinking that she had to have it all figured out.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know that because I've read a bit of Jung, and I heard other examples. I don't know that example. So that's good. So she's basically explaining this beetle experience, and there is a real beetle that he's able to grab in that moment. Outside the window.
Yeah. Let me look it up.
And then she has that
analysis.
Breakthrough.
Beetle. Scarab beetle. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Here we go. It's Yeah, he was talking about synchronicity. This is different than the archetype thing, but it is. It ties
synchronicity. Yeah, that's it. But that's that's definitely going to be one that we're going to talk about. We can talk about now as well.
Synchronicity, dude. That's you can't convince me on that one.
Yeah.
That's the one I'll tell you right now. That's going to be the thing because I've had too many weird things. I've had too many weird things.
Yes. No. And
I don't have the option of not believing.
Yeah. And that's true for not for everybody, but for many people. And myself included,
You've had some weird ones.
Oh yeah, I've had lots of weird ones that I haven't even talked about in my life. Yeah. But so what is it when we see or whenever these weird events occur? Yeah.
A young woman of high education and serious demeanor entered Jung's office. Jung could see that her quest for psychological change was doomed unless he was able to succeed in softening her rationalist shell with a somewhat more human understanding. He needed the magic of coincidence. He asked for it, searched his surroundings for it. He remained attentive to the young woman while hoping something unexpected and irrational would turn up. As she described a golden scarab, a costly piece of jewelry she had received in a dream the night before, he heard it tapping on the window. Okay, so I guess her thing was a brooch or whatever in the shape of a beetle. He looked and saw a gold-green glint. Jung opened the window to coincidence. He plucked a scarabeid beetle out of the air. The beetle, closely resembling the golden scarab, was just what he needed or just what she needed. "Here's your scarab," he said to the woman as he handed her a link between her dreams and the real world. Jung saw a need for human understanding to break through his patient's resistance to his treatment.
Yeah. That's actually interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. That's good.
It's also really good therapy. It's smart therapy.
Yeah. So he so for him, and not knowing the history, but he basically has ascertained that this woman is so closed off in her own interior world, and felt that he needs to make some sort of connection between the exterior world and her interior world, and this event was able to kind of open something up. That's an intervention in psychoanalysis. That's a cool one. There's a beautiful one Lacan does. It's slightly different, but I can't remember because it's a French word. I can't remember what the French word is, but this woman who had a trauma, she'd been in the death camps, and she was Jewish, and the Gestapo, had tortured her. There's a trauma from all of that, and I think this is correct. I'll need to look this up, but there was a certain point when she was talking about the Gestapo And Lacan just leaned over to her and gently brushed her cheek, just gently brushed her cheek. And in French, there's something about the gentle brushing or something that sounds like Gestapo. So the two words, this one word that was full of trauma, that was full of difficulty, in this moment, just this intervention, he did this act, and that sound, the sound of Gestapo, changed, and she had this breakthrough. So anybody who's listening to this and who wants to look that up, just look up the word Gestapo, Lacan in YouTube, and you can see the interview, because I may have got the wording wrong, sure. but that was it. He basically was able to take a word and just change it in her psyche that connected us with something fundamentally different and beautiful and tender.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wonderful, especially in times, I think, when, and then this, I think, to bring it full circle, is again why this podcast hopefully is somewhat beneficial a little, but I feel like people right now are so isolated that any kind of puncturing of that feeling, or that feeling of complete separation from the outside world, could be somewhat beneficial regardless of how it comes across. But yeah, that it's so, because we get all jammed up and then somebody brushes your cheek and that word is like, and then all of a sudden you're just like, that's all I needed.
I should look it up. I'll have my phone's not here.
I can look it up. Let's see. Let's see if I can.
Yeah.
If you can riff, and then we won't have, because God forbid we have any dead air.
I know. Lacan. Well, here, by the way, this has been interesting, because although we're just going to talk about the future of the fundamentalists, talking about dreams, I think this is kind of the theme, is like how to listen to your dream. A story from Lacan's practice. Oh, yeah. I'm thinking this is going to be it. I'm going to just play the audio on here. Oh, it might be in French. It probably will be. Yeah. We're gonna use that. One day in a session, I was telling Lacan about a dream I had, and I told him I wake up every morning at 5 o'clock, and I added, it's at 5 o'clock that the Gestapo came to get the Jews in their houses. At that moment, Lacan jumped up from his chair, came towards me, and gave me an extremely gentle caress on my cheek. I understood it as a geste à pau, the gesture. He had transformed the Gestapo into geste à pau. I don't know how to say it. A very tender gesture, it has to be said, an extraordinarily tender gesture. And that surprise, it didn't diminish the pain, but it made it something else. The proof now, 40 years later, when I recall that gesture, I can still feel it on my cheek. That's it. So I think it's a phrase Gestapo, but Gestapo. It was a gesture as well, which was an appeal to humanity, something like that. Yeah, wonderful. So I mean, it's wonderful. These little moments that can actually change the entire trajectory of your life. Like, so the beetle for Jung, that moment that changed her, and for this woman who was in her 80s, I think, when that interview is recorded, just that. I guess in French, it sounds like Gestapo. This gentle caress. The difference, the I think, argument for hard, or maybe less hard, but more ethereal, foo-foo-y union would be that my understanding is that synchronicity like that can happen when you are under an immense amount of stress, like this person was, or like that woman was. She's completely closed off. And your guard gets lowered for a moment in such a way that all of that energy, that psychic energy that you've built up by being closed off, by being stressed out, by being tormented by this memory or whatever, causes a sort of release into the world that causes the universe itself to react to what's going on in your inner world. So the difference is that Jung would go, no, you actually affected the outside world. You actually affected the beetle. Yeah, and in some weird way. Well, yeah, this is right. So this is the difference, but similar, because like I would, as a Hegelian, whatever, say that there's a real insight into what Jung's saying there, which is we are part of the universe that we perceive, and in a way, we are the universe perceiving itself. Right? We are the universe listening to itself. We are not something separate from the universe. We kind of are, but weirdly that separation is within the universe itself. So again, I always feel that Jung's kind of close to something, but the difference is then Jung is making, as you say, this claim potentially at times in his life that 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 we can psychically influence the world. And there's some truth to that. But here's the difference. I guess the difference is, if you're a psychotic individual, for example, you feel this all the time. Like, a psychotic person is caught up in synchronicity. Like, they see
everything synchronicity.
Everything. And the funny thing about a psychotic individual is everything is a sign, but they don't know what it's a sign of. So if you're a psychotic individual and you see a child eating a purple lollipop, and you suddenly feel that that purple lollipop is telling you something, and you don't know what it is, but you know it's a sign, you know it's a communication to you, but you're not exactly sure what the communication is. Like, there is a certain way, like, for a psychotic person, like, they feel that they've been implanted with...
They do.
They feel all of that. But and that's real. That is real.
For them, right, yeah.
And it is the real.
But I do wonder, I mean, it sounds like you're saying that you're grouping it all into the psychotic, whereas what about... Because Jung, this is fun, we're going to have fun with this. Jung would talk about the individuation process, right? Yeah. So the people who oftentimes, I think, experience moments of synchronicity could be psychotic, or they could actually be on the opposite end of the spectrum and be a little bit more...
Yeah, I don't think... No, I think synchronicity is... Everyone experiences it. It's just the extreme example is someone who... They feel like, for example, the Jewish conspiracy is real, right? Or there is a deep state that's surveilling us, or whatever it is. It's like, it's as real as the Beatles. Now, most people aren't like that. So, but my thing is, in psychoanalysis, it's best just to bracket it out. So for Freud, it's not a question of whether it's real or not. The question is, you just assume it's real. It's like being a kind of literalist, like a religious, a fundamentalist. You take it as absolutely real, but you bracket out whether it really happened or not.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
The reality of it is less important than the effect it has on
the effect. Is that's the thing. So for me, when I hear about the Beatles, you know, maybe as a philosopher, I'm interested in probability and et cetera, but as a psychoanalytically interested, I'm just going, oh, that was a beautiful, let's understand what happened to her in that event, and bracketing out the question of like whether she actually affected a Beatle, which I think is very hard. I mean, that for me, that is difficult.
Which I don't even know that a Jungian would say that she directly affected the
No, I don't
Beatles.
think he would,
I think the argument is more like we are essentially swimming in a consciousness, a sea of consciousness, and we're little fishies roaming around. So it would make sense if you imagine it that way, that Beetle at that time flew that direction for whatever reason, that the Beetle absolutely was not, deciding to go over there. It wasn't flicked on that direction. It wasn't, it was... But... all very fascinating, and I think that it's the stuff about whether or not it was a coincidence and whether or not it was, real or part of the collective unconscious, separating that from the benefit that the patient has.
That's the interesting
thing. That's great.
Yeah.
Because if you can, I think it's not fun to talk about the other stuff unless you can also talk about how cool it is that anything helps anybody ever.
Yes.
Like the fact that it could be a beetle or a caress on the cheek or something, and it can be so simple and so easy, and it's that part's wonderful.
That's the miracle for me. Is like, that's where in a religious sense, miracles are not physical things, because that's just interesting. A miracle is, that phrase, the revolution will not be televised. I mean, the point of that phrase is because the revolution is a transformation in your being, and you can't televise that. You can't record a change in someone's subjectivity, right? You can record someone's leg being healed. You can record some event like that, but you can't record a change in someone's being. Is that really
what that phrase means? I never knew that.
Yeah, I think it's primarily, the revolution will not be televised because the revolution is in your mind. The revolution is in...
That might explain a certain level of anxiety as a social media present person, of being like, why do I not feel, because if I'm going through an internal shift, or other people are going through internal shifts, there's no way to communicate that.
You can't see that. There's a beautiful Jewish parable about the Rabbi of Ger. I mean, it might be vaguely based on truth, but supposedly during the Second World War, this rabbi escaped Nazi Germany, came to Britain, and was able to meet with Winston Churchill. And this is before the British were part of the war effort. And they have a conversation, and Winston Churchill listens to the rabbi and hears what's going on and says, well, what would you like us to do? Like, what can we do? And the rabbi said, well, there's two solutions to the problem. there is the natural and the supernatural. And he says the natural solution would be if 10,000 angels descend from heaven with flaming swords and defeat the Nazi war machine. And he says, but the supernatural solution would be if 10,000 Englishmen parachuted into Germany and freed and liberated the prisoners. And the reason for this parable is going like, the first is natural, because if 10,000 angels descended, you would see them. You'd see the flaming swords, you'd feel it. So it's in the natural realm of being. But if the British changed their attitude, that's supernatural, because you can't see that. If the British
that's
actually
the real
get
miracle.
involved, that's the real miracle. And so again, that's why I'm saying is like, let's bracket out what made the beetle be there, because the real miracle, as you say, is the caress on the chin or the cheek, and the beetle being brought in at that moment was what changed. And like, it's so amazing to think, how do we change? It's so almost impossible, but it happens. It happens.
And like instantaneously and simply.
Yeah.
And when you're least expecting it. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
The miracle thing of being like, okay, I can get behind the possibility, I can get 100% behind the existence of miracles. That makes sense. But it gets a lot more boring when people start turning miracles into proof of X, Y, and Z. Like, oh, how can you have that happen and not believe in this? And it's like, well, no, that's not the point. The point is that miracles happen, and they, in and of themselves, can be can transform someone.
Even in confessional religion, the miracles within, say, Christianity are never the event. So, for example, feeding the 5,000 or 15,000 probably, but that idea is not the miracle. The miracle is that this describes a way that society can operate, in which we can look out for one another, in which we want everyone to be fed, everyone to be cared for. So every physical miracle within, say, the biblical tradition is only a way of setting up the real miracle, which is what a world looks like, in which there is healing and beauty and care. And, because it wouldn't be considered, for like a theologian, a miracle if just something happens that is contrary to our everyday experience of reality. It's only a miracle when it points to a type of way of being in the world, a type of interaction in which healing and love and depth arise. Yeah.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you. That was great. Yeah. That was very fun. Yeah. Well, let's do more of these podcasts. Pete, what do you say?
Yeah, let's try it.
Do you have a takeaway? I mean, that seems
that's the takeaway for me.
Guys, thank you so much. Please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. If you haven't, feel free to leave us a review. We're back. We're going to be doing more. It's going to be very exciting. We'll see how this experiment goes.
Yeah. You may not hear from us for a while.
This might be the last one. It's been a good run. No, we're going to be there. And let us know also any kind of subjects you guys, topics you guys would like us to talk about. I know some people have mentioned sort of the political divide, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and the widening disparity between people right now.
People who are right and the people who are wrong.
Right, us and everyone else.
Whoever the us is.
Exactly, yes. All of us, collectively. Cool. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Pete.
Great.
Bye, everybody.